Hello and welcome to Into the Woods with Holly Worton. This podcast has evolved over the 5+ years since it first launched. From now on, I'm going to be talking about deepening your connection with yourself, taking inspired action, and really trusting yourself and your intuition. And also mindset, of course, but mindset of all kinds, not just business mindset. I think. Things are changing for me, as you may have noticed if you've been following me online or listening to this podcast, so anything goes here. I hope you stay along for the ride. Thank you so much for joining us today, and now let's get into this week's episode. Hello and welcome to the Into the Woods podcast, episode 303. This is your host, Holly Worton, and I'm back with another solo episode. Today I'm going to talk about how to open up to new ways of connecting with the world. This topic is inspired by my recent book, If Trees Could Talk, Life Lessons from the Wisdom of the Woods, and also a question from a listener and friend who says, I would also love to hear you talk about channeling. It would be really interesting to find out more about your journeys in channeling and specifically yours with regards to trees and how you experience it, like hearing, how other people might experience it, the clairsenses, and how it developed. So I'll be talking about that today in the episode. And before we get into today's topic, I wanted to mention a couple of podcasts that I've recently been a guest on. My friend Alice Jennings is a tech whiz, and she's got a fantastic new podcast called Sorted. I was a guest on Sorted, and we had a really great conversation about tech tools, how to get things done, and all kinds of stuff. So if you head over to hollyworton.com/sorted, SORTED, you will be redirected to Alice's site and you can listen to the podcast episode. I think it was a really great conversation, really useful, and I think you will learn some new tools that you can use to manage your business and or life. I was also a guest on a podcast called Stories That Empower. This was a really great conversation. I just heard from someone who'd listened to it and said that they really liked the conversation. We talked about all kinds of things, how to kind of meditate by walking in nature, disconnecting from technology, mindset stuff, personal development, all kinds of good stuff. So I would love to direct you to that episode. And if you go to hollyworton.com/Sean, SEAN, you will be able to listen to that. It was a really, really great conversation, and I think you will enjoy it. So, and also the podcast is really good, so I think check that out too. And that is all for my recent guest opportunities. So I've been talking a lot about the book lately. And in fact, I've been stepping up in a much bigger way with this book than ever before. And that's because I feel like the trees gave me this job of writing this book and spreading their message and their stories out to the world. And I really felt a huge sense of responsibility in terms of stepping up with my visibility and getting the book out there in a much bigger way. To that end, I have hired a couple of people to help me with this. I hired a publicist who specializes in authors and also a book launch manager who helped me launch the book and get it to #1 in 16 categories on Amazon. So that got the book super visible. My publicist, who is absolutely fantastic, and I will link to both of these people in the show notes. But Helen, my publicist, got me a great opportunity on Monday on ITV's This Morning, which is a national show here in the UK. And that was my first time on live television. I had appeared years and years and years ago on a travel TV show. It was a very short interview. It wasn't live, and it was being interviewed by someone I knew. So it was a very different kind of safe experience. This scared the crap out of me. I was really excited about it. I was looking forward to it. I knew it was a great opportunity. And I spent a big chunk of time on the weekend doing some mindset work to make sure that I was in the right place to be able to take advantage of this opportunity and to do really well with it. I also spent a big chunk of time on the train doing some journaling and some more mindset work and also some kind of connecting with the media angels, with Source, with the tree spirits, with the unseen energies or spirits or beings that are accompanying me on this journey of life. And I feel like everything that I did and all the help that I asked for and the support kind of pulled through. I had a very clear intention of coming across as kind of me, natural, down to earth, normal me, rather than, I don't know, trying to pretend to be someone else because I was on television or whatever. But I was very clear in my intention of coming out across as calm and collected and clearly expressing the things that I wanted to say. And from the feedback that I've gotten from other people, I feel like I really pulled that off. So the work came through. The work showed results. And as I said, part of the work that I did was calling in support from the spirit world. And this is an important part of my life. Probably not as big a part of my life as I would like it to be, but it's something that's very important for me. And I wanted to use this episode to talk a little bit more about that and how you can tap into this world of spirit guides, nature spirits, and also sensing the world, connecting with the world in different ways. I think there's a lot that's going on out there that we have access to that we don't necessarily take advantage of. And I think there's a lot that we can learn from new ways of connecting with the world. So let's get into today's episode. So as you may have figured out from previous episodes, if you've listened to other episodes, I channel spirit guides. I channeled the spirits of the trees for my recent book. And, I connect with other things like angels and that kind of thing on a regular basis. Again, not as often as I would like to. My friend Cara Wild, who's also a really clear channel, and my friend Joanna Hennon, they both really have developed a relationship with their guides. Cara has had kind of two main groups of guides over the last few years since I've known her, and she has a great relationship with her guides. Years ago, she created a Channel Your Guide online course, and I think she's about to do a live round of it, so I will link to that in the notes. But basically, she teaches you how to connect with your spirit guides and how to develop a relationship with them. And I took that course years ago. And Cara was a big part of me learning how to channel and learning how to connect with these energies or beings or spirits that are all around us, but that most of us can't see. But they're still there. They're still there to help us and support us and give us support as we move through life. So whether or not you believe in this kind of thing, I would like to ask you to open your mind to the possibility as I talk about this, and I'm open to any questions you may have. As always, you can email me at holly@hollyworton.com. Obviously, I have no evidence for this. I can't scientifically say to you, I know spirit guides are real because this and this double-blind study has proven such. No, this is something that I know with my gut to be true. When I was interviewed on Monday for the trees, one of the first things that they said to me was, I'd really like to think that you're not crazy. And my response was, yeah, me too. I know this stuff is weird. I know this stuff isn't mainstream yet. I know a lot of people don't believe in this stuff. But this is what I know to be true. And that is why I took the risk of standing up on television and talking to a tree and talking to people about talking to trees. And of course, faced a bunch of criticism regarding that. Lots of people saying I was mentally ill, that I was just seeking attention, all the crap that you see on the internet, which I mostly ignored. But I think it's really important that we talk about this stuff because the more we talk about it, the more we normalize it. Now, ever since I have put this book out there and have been talking about the book, I have been shocked by the number of people who have written to me saying, oh, I had a really great conversation last year with this oak tree, or, oh yeah, I talk to trees too, or my friend talks to trees. So many people writing in and telling me that either they or people they know have had experiences talking to trees. And of course, what they mean is not just they're talking to the trees, but they're getting messages back from the trees. And that's really, really meaningful to me because that means that other people are doing this. but they're just not talking about it in a big way. So I would like to encourage you, if you are the kind of person who talks to spirit guides or nature spirits or whatever, talk about it more, podcast about it, blog about it, talk to people about it, because this stuff is real. And the more we talk about it, the more we will normalize it. That is kind of one of the soapboxes that I've been on this week, because I've realized people are more open to this stuff than I thought. And the more they hear about it, the more they will hopefully open up to it. And I think this is such a rich part of life. It's certainly added a whole new layer of life for me, because I feel like I've got extra, don't want to say people because they're not people, but extra beings that I can call on for support, for advice, for perspectives, for just whatever I need. And I always used to think that you had to be born a channel or a psychic or whatever, and you don't. It's a skill that you can develop just like any other skill. If you can learn how to play an instrument or learn a language or learn anything that you've learned in life, you can learn how to channel if you are interested. Talked about this in the past. I will share some links in the show notes. Cara Wild's Channel Your Guide course is an excellent place to get started. It's got tons of information and really good support via Cara, especially if you'll be doing the live course, which is upcoming. I've also read some books that are great about channeling. I've read a great book called Ask Your Guides by Sonia Choquette, which was really useful, and that kind of got me focusing more on angels and talking to angels and asking for help from angels. And I feel like every course that I've done, every book that I've read has added kind of a new layer to how I connect with these unseen energies or beings. So again, why would you want to do this? Opening you up to a higher perspective, to a new perspective, just getting help in life, getting guidance, getting advice. Well, they don't really give advice, but like kind of guidance, perspectives, support in life. And I think most of us could really use some extra support, even if we, maybe feel like we have support already, but we might not be getting everything we need. I mean, this is free. Not saying that you shouldn't hire coaches and mentors, and I don't want to say you should, but that's a very good type of support. It's a type of support that I've provided over the years and that I've hired over the years. And I think having coaches and mentors is really, really important. But also having spirit guides and angels to support us is also super important, and it's free. They don't charge you. So if you're kind of tight on cash or you can't invest in another support system or person or professional, this is a great way to get help at no cost. They are available to us. They want to help us. They want to help us raise our consciousness and connect with the world in new ways and achieve kind of a higher perspective on life and evolution and how we are growing as individuals. So they are there and they are ready, willing, and able to help us. Now, one of the things that Cara always says is that she encourages us to set the intention to connect with what she calls the creme de la creme of the spirit guides, to set the intention to connect with the highest level guide that we can connect with at this point in our lives. And I think that's really important because there are all kinds of energies out there. There are all kinds of things. And as with people, you want to be selective about who you're hanging out with. You want to be selective about who you're getting guidance from. So be selective with your spirit guides. So I started out connecting with spirit guides. I've had different guides over the years. I probably can't even remember their names. And I haven't really spent the time to build a really lasting relationship with any one of them. And maybe that's why they've changed, because I've changed a lot over the years and I haven't necessarily built a strong relationship with any of my guides. So perhaps they've kind of left and new ones have come in as I've up-leveled and changed with my life. I don't know. But it is something that I want to do, and it is something that I want to spend more time on when I have the time. I'm quite busy this year between the launch of my book and my plant spirit initiation apprenticeship and other things that I'm doing. So It's not been a priority, but it's something that I want to make a priority in the future because I'm building a relationship with my power animal now through the shamanic work that I'm doing in my plant spirit initiation apprenticeship. And I'm really liking the way that feels to be building a relationship with my power animal. And I would like to be building that kind of relationship with my spirit guides as well. However, can't do everything all at once, so that will be put on the back burner. But I think that we can really, really benefit from having this type of guidance and having these types of relationships in our lives. Again, guidance, support, it's all good stuff, and they are there to help us. So how do we connect with this guidance? There's something called the clair senses. So we've got our normal senses. As you know, you've got 5 senses. You've got seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, smelling. You also have the potential, the opportunity, the possibility of experiencing what are called clair senses, of which there are 8. Some people may call them the psychic senses. Some people may call them the spiritual senses. Here's what they are. You've probably heard of clairvoyance, clear seeing. So people who see things, premonitions, and they get information from the spirit world in that way. That's probably the most common word. There's also something called claircognizance, which is a clear knowing, like you just know something is true. That's a bit more difficult to maybe explain. It's like you just know something to be true, even though you may have no proof or you can't see it or hear it. It's just, you just know. So claircognizance is clear knowing. You just know. And, I wouldn't be surprised if you've experienced that before. I think most of us have at some point in our lives been in a situation where we just knew something was true, even though we didn't have the proof. Clairaudience is another one, so that's clear hearing. So that means that you're perceiving sounds or words from the spirit realm. Now, this is how I do most of my channeling, and this is how I worked with the spirits of the trees in my book. So I would hear the words of the trees, and I spoke them into my phone and recorded them, and that's how I got the stories of the trees. So I would hear their words, I would hear their voices. And yeah, I get how that sounds. You're hearing voices in your head. A lot of us doubt ourselves when we start working with these senses and wonder, am I just making this up? And I remember asking Lisa Wechtenheiser, my coach, whom I've mentioned many times, and I'll link to her in the show notes, asked her about, how did she know she wasn't making it up? And she said, well, in the beginning, they were using language that wasn't my language. They would speak differently, her spirit guides. And that's something I've noticed as well. So if you read my book about the trees, they use a very different language to how I speak, or how most people speak. There was a lot of repetition. There was a lot of it was just a very different rhythm to speaking. It was a very different feel. So paying attention to those details is how I know that it's not me, that's not that I'm making it up. I'm getting it from something else. Spirits, spirit guides, spirits of the trees, spirits of nature. So clairaudience, that's clear hearing. The next one's clair empathy, which is clear emotion. And so this is like when you can sense other people's emotions, thoughts. That can be difficult to live with if you don't know how to put how to protect yourself from it. This is something that I don't usually experience, except with my husband. We I don't want to say we infect each other with our emotions, but if I'm having a really bad day for whatever reason, he can feel it. And if he's having a crappy day, I can feel it. And that can be challenging. And it has made us aware of how hard it can be for one of us to lift the other one up if one of us is not feeling well, because we're both feeling it. And he's the only person I really experience that with. Thankfully, because it's not easy. And I'm sure that someone who is skilled in managing this sense would know how to maintain their boundaries, but something that I'm still learning. So clear empathy. And maybe you felt that before. So think about if there's maybe been a time when you've just felt something and you knew it wasn't yours, and then maybe you realized it was belonging to someone who was with you, a friend or a family member. Very related to this is clairsentience. So this is like your gut feeling, and this is something I talk about a lot, and I talked about it a lot in my business intuition book. And I always say that my gut is smarter than my head because I really feel stuff. Like I just feel that something's right, I feel that something's wrong, and that's how I make decisions. I don't make my decisions with logic, using my head. I make my decisions with my gut. And I trust my gut. I trust my gut completely. So I am very, very, very clairsentient. I feel whether something is right or wrong, and yeah, it's very, very clear for me. So think for yourself. Think about a time when you've maybe felt something in your gut, when you were trying to make a decision, or when you met a new person and something didn't feel right to you, or maybe they felt, amazing and you were so happy to have met this person because they just felt like such a good fit. Think to that and think about how you've experienced that in your life, paying attention to your gut. And do you trust your gut? Next, there are some maybe less common ones. So there's I'm probably going to pronounce this wrong, clairgustance or clairgustance. It's clear tasting. So you can receive information through your sense of taste. And I'm not quite sure how that works. I've never experienced that. But sometimes people might report tasting a certain food or drink that reminds them of a person or that's related to a person. I don't know. I've never experienced that. But stop and think about whether you might have experienced that at some time. There's clairsalience, which is clear smelling. And this is something that I have experienced on occasion. So this is where you kind of get information or insights from smell. So you might smell something that smells like a person you know, maybe a perfume that they wear, or flowers, or you smell a smell that's related to something or someone, and that smell provides you with certain information or insight. Another one, and I think that's this final one, is clairtangency, so clear touching. So it's like getting information through touching something or someone. So maybe touching an item of clothing, or touching, say, a stone in a stone circle, or a building, or an object of someone's. Getting information through touching something. I don't think I've ever experienced this, but you may. So think back to maybe there was a time when you might have touched an object and had a flash of insight or information, or maybe through touching something you saw something or heard something, because that might trigger other senses as well. I don't know. I don't experience it. So some of these are related to our normal senses. So clairvoyance, clairseeing, clairaudience, clairhearing, clairtangency, clairtouching, clairsalience, clairsmelling, clairgustance, clairtasting. So those are very much related to our normal senses. But then there's kind of the more subtle ones, which is the claircognizance, clairknowing, clairsentience or clairfeeling, clairempathy or clairemotion, emotional feeling. So again, clairvoyance is probably the one that we're most familiar with in terms of the word, and having heard about people being able to see ghosts, angels, spirits, auras. But that may or may not resonate with you. You may or may not experience that. You may connect with the spirit world or the world with these other clair senses. So, like I said, I don't see things. I'm not clairvoyant, but I definitely know and feel and hear things that can't necessarily be logically explained. So I think it's worth, if you're interested in connecting with the world in this way, stop and think how you might have experienced these things in the past. And I think exploring these senses can be a really good way of learning how to connect with the world in different ways. And these are very subtle senses compared to our normal five senses. So you might need to slow down. Give yourself the time, the space, meditate a little, sit in silence, and really give yourself the time and space to tap into these senses. Because they're very subtle, and you're probably not used to using them if you're not used to channeling or doing this kind of work. But you are absolutely capable of developing these senses. And I would like to point out to you the fact that you've probably had that gut feeling at some point in your life. And so if you've had that gut feeling, that's one of those subtle senses. That's one of the clear senses. So if you can tap into that and you can recognize that, you can also develop some of the other clear senses as well. And I really do believe that having access to spirit guides, nature spirits, angels, through these senses can help us to live a happier, more fulfilled life and to be more successful in the world, because it's an extra layer of support that most people don't have because they don't know they can tap into this stuff. And, if you're curious about it, give it a try. Do some research. I think a lot of people are opening up to this in more and more ways. So I would like to encourage you to give it a try if you don't already. And if you do use some of the clear senses, see what you can do to maybe pay attention to some of the other clear senses, because they're all there, whether they're active or dormant or not. You might want to just pick one and really focus on developing that. Most of the time that I'm channeling, I either hear the voice and I channel it verbally and record it, or I do a video, or I'll write it down. Like sometimes I will do, it's kind of like automatic writing because I'm just writing and I don't necessarily hear the voice and then write it down. I'm just writing as I get the information. But again, it's in language that's not my own language, so I know it's not me that's writing it. Or at least that's what I believe to be true. All of this stuff is still very new. I mean, it's been around for ages. It's been around for generations and centuries. But we're still not talking about it openly. We're still not sharing all of our stories and experiences the way we could. So I think the more people talk about this, the more we'll learn about how we can tap into these senses, how we can use them for ourselves. But in the meantime, I really, really encourage you to get started by just experimenting. See how it works for you. See what feels most natural to you. And I will link to some more resources in the show notes, and everything that I've mentioned here I will link to as well. And if you have any questions, as always, you can email me at holly@hollyworton.com or get in touch online. If you want me to talk more about this, if you want me to, explore this more in depth in another episode, or if you want me to explore this with Joanna or Cara or someone else, please let me know. I really like talking about this stuff, and as of this week, I really, really feel like it's my responsibility to help spread the word about this stuff and to really step up in a much bigger way with my visibility about this stuff so that I can help to normalize this. So that is all for now. Next week, I will be back with another solo episode. I'm not yet sure what I'm talking about, but I've got a list of ideas. In the meantime, I would love to see you over at Patreon. If you get value from this podcast, I would love to have you join me on Patreon and support me there. If you head to patreon.com/Holly Worton, that's patreon.com/Holly Worton, you can join me there. Membership starts at just $1 a month, and you get exclusive access to stuff that I don't share anywhere else, including a monthly Q&A and done-for-you mindset work, depending on the tier that you sign up at. So, thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe if you haven't already, and let me know what you want me to talk about. I have a survey that I've got that I would love for you to fill out. If you go to hollyworton.com/survey, there's a really quick survey. It probably won't take you more than 3 or 5 minutes to fill out. It's basically just asking you how you want to hear from me, what you want me to talk about, what you want me to share with you in terms of podcast, blog, whatever. So hollyworton.com/survey. None of the questions are obligatory, so you can answer one, you can answer them all, you can answer whatever you want. And Remember to visit hollyworton.com/303 for the show notes on this episode. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks so much for listening to Into the Woods with Holly Worton. You can find more information about today's episode, including links for topics that were discussed, at hollyworton.com. That's HOLLYWORTON.com. If you'd like to connect with other listeners and get support on your journey, I would love for you to join my private community on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Holly Worton. That's patreon.com/Holly Worton. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you next week.